Hello, my name is David, and I would like to share to you a story that happened to me about 3 months ago. Let me tell you a story. I used to be an employee at a restaurant called Willys Wonderland. For those of you who don't know, Willys Wonderland is a restaurant where kids can go and play arcade games, eat pizza and hot dogs, and watch animatronics sing and dance. Our main animatronic band is Willie the Weasel, Tito the Turtle, Gus Gorilla, Siren Sarah, Nighty Night, Artie Alligator, Ozzy the Ostrich, and many other animatronics. Now, let me tell you the story of how I got quarantined there. I was working at an afternoon shift, and everything seemed normal. Families came in the restaurant, kids ate some pizza, and played those arcade games. They went into the super happy fun room and ate there. And some kids liked to go and watch and see the animatronic bands perform. It was just a normal day. So much so that I decided to take a little quick break from my shift and decided to go up front and watch the animatronics perform. Some of our animatronics were a little bit run down. It was actually pretty funny, as some of the animatronics would glitch out a little bit, and the lower portion of Ozzy the Ostrich's mouth was completely broken. As I watched the animatronics wobble around the stage, I then saw this weird black car drive up towards the building. The man inside the car looked like some weird person or weird scientist that was wearing what looked like some type of gas mask. The guy constantly was looking at the stage inside the building. Once the animatronic show ended, he got out of his car, grabbed some sort of toolbox, and walked directly inside the building. Then one of my employees walked up to the strange man, and the strange man showed one of my employees a badge. After when the weird man showed one of the employees the badge, he immediately pointed directly to the animatronics behind the stage, in which the employee immediately let him go see the animatronics. And so immediately the strange man walked up to one of the animatronics, Nighty Night, and got out his toolbox and started to program and work on the Nighty Night animatronic. It was actually pretty weird because the more he continued to work on the animatronic, he started to look at his weird novel-like papers every time when he was working or programming on the animatronic. It was pretty suspicious. But, however, I decided to shrug it off and I decided to just go and continue my shift simply just by cleaning all the tables. But it still felt pretty odd. Once the gas man was done working on the animatronics were ready and all pumped up again. Only this time, the show was much different this time. For some reason, it seems that the gas man, which we will call him from this story from now on, seemed to have added a new sequence to the animatronics, as when the show began to start, something was immediately off. The animatronics weren't moving at all. The only thing they were moving were their heads. There was no music, and the animatronics didn't start performing. It almost seemed like the animatronics then all of a sudden began to stare at each other, as if they were some living beings that were confused. Pretty soon, the gas man packed all of his tools up and left to the front building. Only, before he left, he turned around to look at me for one last time, before he eventually went out the front door and drove away in his car. Let's just say that I was pretty glad that he was leaving. The animatronic bands just continued to look at each other and just began to stare directly at the audience. Eventually, all the guests and the customers were getting pretty uncomfortable to see the animatronic animals just casually staring at them. Then, all of a sudden, this creepy chameleon animatronic named Cammy looked at a child and then started screaming. At this moment, I knew that something was wrong, so I went over to one of my employees, Kim, the employee that was talking to the gas man. I asked Kim if the gas man had told her anything about the animatronics, and Kim told me that she didn't know anything about this gas-like man. All what she knew about him was that he had a badge that said that he was an animatronic programmer. That even got me even more suspicious. However, though, the Cammy Chameleon animatronic still continued to scream. At this moment, a lot of customers and even some kids were starting to cry, and a bunch of customers began to get annoyed. So me and a lot of other employees grabbed the Cammy Chameleon animatronic and put it in the parts and service room in hopes that maybe we could try to fix it. And so after that, we continued our shifts. And all the other employees stayed in the parts and service room to work on the Cammy Chameleon animatronic in hopes of fixing it, because we just believed that the animatronic was probably broken or something. Eventually, me and the other employees continued to do our shifts, but I was still visibly creeped out of what had just happened with the Cammy Chameleon animatronic. And I still started to think about what was going on right now, and was still very confused. Pretty much a lot of other weird things began to happen around the restaurant, as the animatronics still began to act normal. However, it seemed that they were more glitchier than ever, and that started to even annoy me out. However, though, all of a sudden, I heard this loud, ferocious scream coming from the parts and service room. A bunch of customers heard those screams. I reassured the customers that nothing wrong was happening, but I knew that something was up. So I immediately ran into the parts and service room to see what was up. And what I saw horrified me. What I saw were some of my employees laying on the floor in a pool of blood in the parts and service room. It was casually disgusting and very, very horrifying. And what I saw right in front of me even horrified me even more. Right in front of me looked like the Cammy Chameleon animatronic, but this time it was turned around as if it was facing the wall. And then the Cammy Chameleon animatronic once again started to scream at the top of its lungs, like it was watching some type of family member being murdered. I eventually called the manager to come to the parts and service room and see the total madness that was happening in the parts and service room. When the manager walked in, he was instantly horrified to see the Cammy Chameleon animatronic screaming at the top of its lungs and see some of the employees laying on the floor dead. Once the manager walked out to the Cammy Chameleon animatronic to see if it was okay, then all of a sudden, something shocking happened. The Cammy Chameleon animatronic began to turn around on its own and jumped on top of the manager and bit a chunk of his face off and started to chew on it. Another employee rushed into the parts and service room and tackled the Cammy Chameleon animatronic. But however, the Cammy Chameleon animatronic grabbed the employee by the neck and threw him to the side of the wall. Eventually, I ran out of the parts and service room and I held the door shut and locked it, in hopes the animatronic wouldn't come out. After when that happened, I immediately went back to the dining area to see if all the customers were okay. But what I saw even made me more sick. Right there in the dining area were almost all of the customers were lying on the floor. They were all dead. One customer's eyes were gouged right out. One customer had his stomach ripped open, and one customer's head was completely decapitated. And the worst part is that I looked directly at the front door, and I saw that there was a wooden bench stuck underneath the door handles, to prevent the door from opening. This shocked me even more. And that's when I looked at the animatronic show stage and my face completely turned pale. All of the animatronics were gone, as if they had disappeared from the show stage. I was immediately scared and confused on what was going on. That's when all of a sudden I saw this weird black shadow standing right in front of me. At first, I thought it was some employee that had survived the weird insane massacre that has happened here. But when I got closer, I realized that that was not a human being. It looked much larger and much bigger. All of a sudden, I took one step back because I was instantly scared. But then, the weird shadow began to walk close to me. I was even scareder, and so I shouted the words, "Show yourself!" at the weird shadow. And that's when the shadow revealed itself, and I was shocked. The shadow was none other than the Nighty-Night animatronic, holding its sword directly at me. And the worst part is that Nighty-Night's sword was completely covered in blood. I immediately was horrified. I could feel that my heart was pounding at the speed of lightning as I saw the animatronic moving on its own. But however, then I looked to the corner of the building and I saw one of my employees, Kim, standing right behind the wall of Willys Wonderland, and she told me to run. Pretty soon, the animatronic started to run at me, and so I began to run away from the animatronic room. Eventually, as I was running, I grabbed a chair from one of the dining tables and I threw it at the Nighty-Night animatronic, and it fell collapsing down onto the floor. This was me and Kim's chance. Me and Kim took our chances and we ran off to the security room to call the police and tell them what was happening. Me and Kim both locked the door to the security room so nothing would come in. I then called the police on one of the phones inside the security room of Willys Wonderland. When I called 911, I was telling them a bunch of details and information about what was happening. However, when the 911 caller asked me about the description of the car that the gas man that was programming on the animatronics was, I said it was the black car, and she told me fearfully that authorities were on their way, and then she just hung up. Me and Kim were in the security office, fearfully scared, as we were worried that the animatronics would come after us. But the more I began to think about it, I began to think, what the heck was going on? Why are the animatronics activating on their own? Are the animatronics alive? Are they possessed by some evil spirits or something? Just why was this happening? There was no way in heck that the animatronics could have minds of their own. But however, as I continued to think, I heard this weird thing slide up the side of the building. When I opened the security office door, I saw that there was this weird yellow tar on the windows of the building, as if we had been quarantined. I then dialed 911 again, and when I called, there was this investigator who called me, and he told me some disturbing stuff. Apparently, we weren't the first restaurant that this was happening to. Apparently, the same gas man that I saw before was at 3 different restaurant places with similar like animatronics. And apparently, this weird gas man had somehow been infecting several different animatronics at different pizza restaurant buildings with some weird like virus or disease that causes the animatronics to have their own minds and causes them to move around on their own and causes them to gain a very, very aggressive, malicious corruption to them that causes them to go rogue and kill almost everyone they see. Because of this, they decide to quarantine the animatronics. Unfortunately, there were some customers that were able to survive through some of the attacks in the restaurants. and they were all immediately taken to hospitals. The investigator then told me to stay inside the building at all costs, as the authorities would pick us up soon. And so me and Kim continued to wait for the police officers to come and take us away from this awful place. After when the investigator hung up, there was this large pounding sound on the security door, and then the security door bust open, and it was revealed that the person that bust open through the security door was Gus the gorilla. Gus immediately ran after Kim and tackled her to the floor, grabbed her by the head, and started to slam her head into the ceiling. I tried to get Gus off of Kim, but Gus punched me through the wall. Gus was the heaviest and was the strongest animatronic to have ever been built by the company. Way before this happened, there was an incident where the Gus Gorilla animatronic accidentally fell onto an employee, which broke his ribs completely, and he had to be in the hospital for almost 2 months. Anyways, after when Gus punched me into the wall, Gus then grabbed me by the neck and started to choke me down from the floor. And then Gus, I don't remember what happened next, but all I remember is that after that, Gus then punched me in the face, and then everything went black. I woke up in the hospital. When I looked up, I found that I had a bandage wrapped around my head. When I asked the doctor what had happened, the doctor told me that one of the animatronics had somehow been able to knock me out for a while. Eventually, the police did find my body, and they were able to bring me to the hospital. As for the animatronics, the police officers and a bunch of other mechanics at Willys Wonderland weren't able to find the animatronics, and so they assumed that the animatronics had somehow left the building. When he said that line gave me chills down my spine. A few days later, I was taken back to my house. Later on, there were a bunch of news reports about all the incidents that had been happening at Willys Wonderland and at all the other restaurants that had animatronics. Some of the customers and the employees that were there at the incident at Willys Wonderland were being held at the hospital, and some of them died a few days later from their injuries. As for the gas man, who was technically the one responsible for all of this happening, was never found. But however, some of the police were able to find some of this data work and find some of this toolbox works. But unfortunately, though, the gas man was apparently gone. They decided to give this animatronic disease a name and called it animatronic CO2, a disease that causes animatronics to go rogue and have minds of their own. But the scariest part of the story is that the animatronics at Willys Wonderland were completely gone, as if they had disappeared from the building. It was clear to the police officers that the animatronics had escaped from the building, and they were now loose in the streets. After when that sentence was made, in ultimate fear, I moved out of Hazelville and moved to North America to avoid the animatronics from coming to my house and probably trying to kill me again. At least I'm safe from those animatronics. But, however, I still have nightmares about the incident that had happened to this day. I still can't recover from what had happened at Willys Wonderland. The government has tried to cover this incident up and say that nothing bad has ever happened. It's just like there was just some weird flaw in the animatronic system that caused some disturbance. But I knew that wasn't true, and that there was really something going on. And I hope one day that will finally spread the message. But for now, I just gotta try to stay alive and hope that the animatronics will probably never find me, and that the animatronics will probably be found, and they will be captured and studied in hopes that maybe there will be a way to stop this disease from happening to many other people. But for now, it's time to just wait and let nature take its course.